Imagine a regular day at the grocery store. Everything seems normal, but what if right there, behind the counter, someone's life is teetering on the edge? This is the story of one such ordinary encounter, where a father, looking past his daughter's smile, heard a young woman's silent cry. In that moment, would you choose to stay silent? Or would you step into a fire for a stranger, a fire you couldn't even see? This is how a single simple question changed one person's life and another's resolve. The world, to 5-year-old Emily, was an endless source of wonder. Today that wonder was encapsulated in a shiny new keychain, a tiny glittery unicorn she clutched tightly in her hand. Her father, Daniel, watched her with a soft smile as they navigated the brightly lit aisles of the grocery store. It was a simple, normal Tuesday evening, a brief moment of peace in the constant whirlwind of being a single father. For Daniel, who had been a firefighter for nearly a decade before his wife's passing, life was less about grand adventures and more about making sure Emily had a warm bed and a full stomach. His days of facing down roaring infernos were behind him, but the lessons he learned, about reading people, about seeing the signs of panic and fear, had never left. They were etched into his very being. When they reached the counter, Daniel's focus shifted from Emily's joyful humming to the cashier. She was a young woman, maybe 23 or 24, with tired eyes and a name tag that read Sophie. But it wasn't her name that caught his attention. It was her hands. They were shaking. Not the kind of shaking you get from being cold or from a momentary jolt. This was a deep, persistent trembling that seemed to radiate from a place of nerves, fear, or something much, much deeper. He placed the gallon of milk on the counter, the plastic jug making a soft thud, and watched her fumble with the scanner. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked gently, his voice a low rumble. She looked up, a small, weary smile flickering across her lips, the kind that says, "I don't want to talk about it," and mumbled, "Yeah, I'm fine. Just a bit tired." But Daniel wasn't convinced. His gut twisted with a familiar unease. He had seen that smile before, worn by people standing on the edges of burning buildings, trying to convince themselves they weren't terrified. He had seen that strained expression on the faces of families who had lost everything. He had been through too much in life to ignore the clear signs of someone hurting. As a firefighter, he had trained himself to see past the masks people wore, to look for the flicker of fear in their eyes. He recognized it now in Sophie's. He watched her try to punch in the serial code, her fingers trembling so badly she had to backspace twice. "Are you sure?" he pressed softly, his tone unwavering. "Because it looks like something's wrong." Sophie's eyes darted briefly toward the manager's office, a glass-walled room on the far side of the store, and then quickly away. The glance was a silent confession, a brief moment of panic that she immediately tried to hide. She shook her head, a gesture of dismissal that was anything but convincing. "It's nothing, just a long day." Emily, in her childlike honesty and without a shred of adult cynicism, tilted her head. "Are you cold? Daddy can get you his jacket." Sophie's strained expression softened for a brief moment, and she gave a small chuckle that didn't reach her eyes. "No, sweetie. That's very kind, but I'm fine." Daniel's gut told him she was hiding something, that her long day was a flimsy excuse for a much bigger problem. He wanted to push further, to ask her about the glance at the manager's office, to force the truth out of her. But he also didn't want to embarrass her in front of the 2 customers now waiting behind him. So he paid, thanked her with a pointed nod that he hoped conveyed his concern, and started to walk away. Yet something in him wouldn't let it go. It was the old firefighter's instinct, the feeling that told him not to leave a scene until he was certain it was safe. Halfway to the exit, he turned around and saw Sophie lean against the counter for just a moment, her shoulders slumped as if trying to steady herself. Then the store manager, a stocky man in his 40s with a permanent scowl and a name tag that read Mr. Thompson, stepped out of his office and barked something at her in a low but sharp tone. Sophie stiffened instantly, her posture snapping back to attention, the very picture of a soldier being reprimanded. That was the moment Daniel knew this wasn't about tiredness. This was about power. This was about fear. He went back to the counter, his jaw set, waiting until the other customer had left. Emily, oblivious to the simmering tension, played with her unicorn keychain, its glittery surface catching the fluorescent light. "Listen," Daniel said quietly, leaning in just enough so Emily wouldn't overhear. "I've noticed you keep looking toward your manager's office. If there's something wrong, you can tell me." Sophie's lips parted, then closed again. Her eyes darted toward the manager's empty office once more, a look of pure terror in them. "I really shouldn't," she whispered, her voice barely audible. It's nothing I can talk about." Daniel lowered his voice even further, a tone he used to calm victims trapped in smoke-filled rooms. "I'm a dad. I've seen enough to know when someone's in trouble. And I'm not going to walk away without making sure you're okay." For a moment she looked like she might cry. Tears welled in her eyes, making them glisten under the harsh lighting. She glanced at the manager's office again, then at Daniel, as if weighing the risk of speaking against the relief of being heard. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter, the knuckles turning white. Finally, in the faintest voice, a breath of a confession, she said, "It's him. He harasses me." Daniel felt his chest tighten, the old protective instinct flaring up. "Harasses you? How?" Her eyes glistened, and the words came out in a torrent of pent-up fear. "Comments, touching my shoulder when he walks by, standing too close, saying things no one should ever say to someone at work. I told him to stop once, and he cut my hours." Daniel's jaw clenched so tight he could feel the muscles ache. "How long has this been going on?" 6 months, she whispered, the number a heavy stone dropped between them. "I need this job. My rent's overdue, and I just can't afford to make him angrier." The weight of her words hit Daniel hard, a cold, familiar dread washing over him. He looked at Emily, who was blissfully unaware, humming to herself as she played with her unicorn keychain. He knew what it was like to feel powerless. He'd been there after his wife passed away, when the medical bills piled up and every day felt like a battle against a world that didn't care. The fear of not being able to provide, of not being able to protect, was a universal language he understood all too well. He took a deep breath, his own anger simmering beneath a calm exterior. "Sophie, you don't have to deal with this alone." She shook her head violently, her eyes wide with panic. "Please don't say anything. It'll just make things worse." But Daniel wasn't the type to stand by. He was a man who ran toward the fire, not away from it. He wasn't going to confront the manager right there, not with Emily present and Sophie already so shaken she looked like she might break. Instead, he told Sophie he'd be back, a promise that seemed to calm her slightly. He took Emily to the car and after a quick call, his sister agreed to watch her for a couple of hours. When he returned, the store was quieter. The after-work rush had subsided, leaving only a few shoppers. Sophie was still at the counter, forcing a practiced smile for the few customers she had left. Daniel waited until the line was gone before walking up again. "I know you told me not to get involved," he began, his voice low and sincere, "but I can't pretend I didn't hear what you said." Sophie's eyes widened in alarm, a silent plea for him to stop. "Please, Daniel." "I'm not going to start yelling at him in the middle of the store," he assured her, holding up a hand. "But I know the law. I know there are ways to make him stop, and I'm willing to stand by you while you report this." Her lips trembled. I'm scared." "I know," he said softly, a genuine look of empathy in his eyes. "But courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing anyway." After a long pause, a silence filled with 1,000 fears and doubts, she whispered, "What if no one believes me?" Daniel leaned in. "Then they'll have to deal with me. I've seen men like him before and they get away with it because people stay silent. Not this time." Slowly she nodded, a single tiny gesture of trust. Together they went to the break room, a small drab space with a beat-up table and a coffee maker. Sophie, her hands still shaking, pulled out her phone and shakily called the company's HR department. Daniel stayed beside her the entire time, his calm presence a steady anchor for her rising panic. She described the harassment in detail, naming Mr. Thompson and explaining how her hours were cut when she resisted his advances. The HR representative on the other end listened patiently and promised an investigation. They told her she wouldn't have to work her next shift until it was resolved, a small victory that seemed to give her a little bit of her strength back. When they walked out of the break room, Mr. Thompson saw them together and his scowl deepened into a furious glare. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice low and menacing. Sophie's voice shook, but she stood a little taller, a fragile shield of defiance forming around her. "What's going on is that I've reported you." The man's face went pale, his composure cracking. You can't." "I can," she said, the words surprising even herself. "And I did." Daniel stepped forward just enough for his presence to be felt, his broad shoulders and steady gaze acting as a physical barrier between them. "You're done intimidating her. If I hear you so much as look at her the wrong way again, you'll have more than HR to answer to." Mr. Thompson sputtered, his eyes darting between Sophie's newfound courage and Daniel's unwavering resolve, but he didn't reply. As they left, Sophie exhaled shakily, a heavy weight lifting from her shoulders. I can't believe I did that." "You did," Daniel said with a small smile. And you're stronger than you think. She looked at him with a deep gratitude in her eyes, tears of relief now, not fear. Thank you, for not walking away. He shrugged. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change someone's whole world. Later that week, Sophie called Daniel to say the company had suspended the manager pending a full investigation. HR had offered her extra hours at a different location, a fresh start. Daniel smiled when he hung up the phone. Emily, overhearing part of the call, asked, "Daddy, is she okay now?" "Yes, sweetheart," he said, pulling her close. Because sometimes you just have to stand up for someone even if you don't know them well. Kindness is more powerful than we think. Even a simple question like, "Are you okay?" can change someone's life.